Sláinte, how you do, buckaroos? How the heck are you? I am Tom, the Whiskey Whisperer. I've been playing around with cocktails, so I've got two cocktails that both use bourbon and lemon. And I'm going to tell you the recipe, the breakdown, but and then kind of my riff on them. So I took an idea. I wanted to do a bourbon and lemon cocktails. I had some fresh lemon and I had some bourbon, but I like a simple classic cocktail. So I found one called the Gold Rush that just uses bourbon, honey, and lemon, and it's served on the rocks. Yeah, it's basically a cold hot toddy, a cold toddy. Yeah. Anyway, say, wait a minute, I'm not making a toddy here. Anyway, what I'm doing different here is that they serve the drink. They serve the drink on the rocks. I'm serving it straight up, which means I did chill it. And I want to do a shout out on the honey that I use. Came from a friend, Todd Shade. So it is somewhat local honey, and it's a great quality raw honey. So I did play around with the amounts though to where they were using almost equal parts of. I kind of changed that up. So here's what I got with the first one, the Gold Rush, is I've got 3 ounces of bourbon. I've got 1 ounce of lemon and 1 ounce of honey. And I've got it served straight up with a lemon wheel garnish there. I mean, it's almost right. It's almost a whiskey sour. We're using lemon as your, I'm sorry, using the honey as your sweetener. But yeah, but like I said, it's the ingredients for a hot toddy served cold. So it's a cold toddy. anyway. My golly, it is delicious. So I think what really helps here is the sweetener, right? The honey. I'm using a good quality raw honey. I mean, a very good quality raw honey. It's absolutely delicious. So it's just sweetening it just enough. It's really not even as sweet as your typical whiskey sour might be. And I thought about doing a whiskey sour, but then I said, no, we've all had a whiskey sour. So I picked 2 cocktails that I had never had before. And I've actually had this just served hot. Anyway, a Gold Rush, all the ingredients of a hot toddy served cold. Anyway. If I owned a bar and I had this drink on special, that's exactly how I'd present it. All the ingredients of a hot toddy served cold. Anyways, oh mercy, it's been trying to bring it down a notch. It was a rough work week. Not that my work was that rough, it's just that the weather was unpredictable and it really puts a hurt on my old bones. So I really haven't done much this weekend. I had a doctor's appointment yesterday. I had to run to the store afterwards, and we just kind of came home and watched some movies, and that's kind of how it's been. Found some movies on sale, so I bought a couple of them yesterday, about one today. I've been finding comfort in old movies older again. I'm slowly becoming my dad, as it were. I'm watching the same movies, the same handful of movies over and over again. My dad would get a kick out of the movies I'm watching. He was a big John Wayne fan. So we watched those same movies over and over again. Now I've got a lot of them in my collection that we tend to watch over and over again as well. But the one I picked up today wasn't a John Wayne movie. Actually, it was an old one I remember watching as a kid called The Great Race. It's probably been about 3, maybe even 4 decades since I've seen the movie. It's basically like watching a live action cartoon, right? It's a Blake Edwards movie, so it's a farce, but it's brilliant. You could tell that, I don't know this to be a fact, but it seems like some of the characters in the movie they used to base for the cartoon wacky races. The Professor Fate character seems a lot like Dick Dastardly. But it's just one of those good fun movies that just doesn't make any sense, It's just fun to watch. Although there's a couple gags in the movie, and there's places where there's songs, which makes me think that Mel Brooks got a couple of ideas from that movie for Blazing Saddles, because Great Race came out first. The placing of songs and the lyrics remind me of a couple parts from Blazing Saddles, so I gotta wonder if Mel Brooks was a little bit influenced by that particular movie. And I hadn't put it together before until watching it this morning, because there's, again, some of the lyrics, some of the lines, and then some of the farcical, things that go on. The show was inspired by the 1965. Okay, my wife found a deal where it does show that Wacky Races was inspired by the movie The Great Race. I kind of had a feeling, but I didn't know that to be fact. Because there's a lot of the characters, right? The Leslie the Great, or the Great Leslie character. You can certainly find Peter Proud in there. The female character, certainly you could find Penelope Pitstop. The rest of them they kind of made up, but you definitely could tell that Professor Fate, he was a template for Dick Dastardly. I didn't show you what bourbon I'm using for these cocktails. I should have done that first. Backbone bourbon is what I'm using here. Uncut, straight bourbon whiskey, 113.1. You don't have to use a bourbon like this. I've found, though, if I'm making a cocktail, I do prefer 90 and above for these particular cocktails, because you're taking them down a notch. I find if you use an 80 proof bourbon, it tends to feel a little watery. And some of that just could be my palate, too. Because the older I get, the bigger I like the bourbon. I like those big, bold flavors. Oh, gosh, that is absolutely delicious, man. That's delicious. Oh, mercy. I do a Whiskey Whisper video. I haven't done a Whiskey Whisper video in a while, not just Whiskey Whisper, I should say. But I had an idea for these cocktails, right? I wanted to do something different. I didn't do either of them exactly how they were written. I kind of, put my spin on them. This one I actually got closer to the recipe than the second one I'm going to have, but I'll explain that one later. Because I did use the ingredients exactly what this one called for. I just changed the proportions of the ingredients, I guess. Because if I did it their way, it would be an incredibly sweet drink. I'm just not there, man. But we had some fresh lemon, so I kind of want to take advantage of it. The truth is, it is cold here in the Ozarks today. We definitely had some rain. For a minute there, it looked like it was snow, but it might have been more sleet. And both cocktails that I'm having now are more summer-like cocktails. They both kind of feel like summer, which is why I served them both straight up and not on the rocks. But still in all, again, having said that, honey, bourbon, and lemon, those are the ingredients for a hot toddy. So this is basically a cold toddy. I'm not sure why they didn't name it that. That should have been named a cold toddy, man. Because it's got all the ingredients here right there. It's cold cough medicine. It coats the throat. anyway, I digress. If we had some herbs growing, if we had some fresh mint, I'd put it in there for some aromatics. It'd be brilliant. Gosh, this is nice. It really is. And I know these ingredients work well warm. Anyway, I guess a hot toddy, some will put some hot water, some use tea. It kind of just depends on your taste. I like to start with a tea base and then add the honey, lemon, and bourbon for a toddy. Some will use just a little bit of hot water. Really, it's up to your taste buds. There's really no wrong way. It's really up to you and what makes you feel better. But I looked at those ingredients, and I didn't think about it until I was putting the cocktail together in the kitchen. My wife was in there doing something, and I was putting the cocktail. It's got honey, lemon, and bourbon. By golly, that's a toddy. It just hit me right at that moment. Can be. I joked that my brain's like an old computer. You input whatever you want in there, and sometimes it takes a while for that answer to come out. There are times I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning yelling, "Oh yeah, this is it! I get it now." Okay. Mercy. Sometimes it takes a minute for all that to compute in there. There's a lot of, well, the problem is there's a lot of useless knowledge in there, and it's kind of going up the works. But that useless knowledge has won me a lot of concert tickets over the years. It hasn't been quite some time because, well, I don't listen to the radio anymore. And I guess that's my drawback. I can't win anything anymore because I don't listen to the radio. I listen to my Spotify. I just got tired of listening to the same songs over and over again. The commercial radio in general sucks, but right in this particular neck of the woods, it is really horrible. It's not as bad if when I get up to St. Louis or even over to Kansas City, you can find some decent radio stations. But here in Springfield, they all suck. It doesn't matter what genre you listen to; they all blow. They're basically every radio station, regardless of the genre, is basically top 40. If you're listening to a country station, you're getting country top 40. If you're listening to a rock station, you're listening to rock top 40. You're hearing the same tunes over and over again ad nauseum. So I plug in my own stuff. I've got one particular channel on my Spotify I call Beer Whisper Radio, which basically has every song that I plugged into other playlists on one giant playlist. So I mean, I could really go from Iron Maiden to John Coltrane in one song. It doesn't happen often, but it is possible, right? Well, the other day I went from Tina Brooks jazz, went from a True Blue to the Angels Marseille. That's a pretty big jump. But then I've got some specialized playlists. If I'm just in the mood for jazz, I can play that. If I'm just in the mood for hard rock, I can play that. If I want to hear classic rock, I can play that. But I've got a lot of mixes that just contain a lot of things. I've got some weekend mixes, excuse me, that more party tunes, or for me, what I consider a party tune. Uh, Got a couple playlists when I'm in the mood to reminisce, that kind of thing. That's what I like about Spotify. I guess I wish they treated their artists better, but I like being able to kind of do what I want to do. I tried doing Pandora. The problem with Pandora is well, basically, they don't have the library. They don't have the library. There's a lot of songs because when there was that thing with Neil Young, I tinkered with the idea of cutting Spotify, so I did the pay version of Pandora, so I could basically create my own playlist as well. But they don't have anywhere near the library. There is a lot of artists that I like, a lot of my favorite artists that I could not get on Pandora. Pandora is great if you just like mainstream music, because that's the artists I have. But my tastes tend to run a little bit to the obscure, right? So I mean, there's a lot of regional artists that I can find on Spotify that I could not get on Pandora. And I'm really not a mainstream kind of guy. I never have been. My tastes have always ran just a tad to the obscure. So, and that's which is my problem with commercial radio, is that you know exactly what you're going to hear. You know exactly if they play a specific band. You know exactly what songs they're going to play. If they play Queen, it's going to be the songs you all know. They're not going to play I'm in Love with My Car, right? If you hear Aerosmith, it's going to be the songs you expect them to play. They're not going to play Chip Away the Stone. They're not going to play the little obscure tunes that if you're a fan of the band that you love. They're not going to play obscure artists like UK like I listen to, or again, there's not a lot of jazz on the radio either, or blues. So the blues artists I love, I'm not going to hear. I recently had the opportunity and the pleasure to do a video with Tulsa blues legend Scott Ellison. Scott Ellison's just great, and he's well known in the blues world, but he's not going to get commercial radio here in Springfield, Missouri, and that's sad. So I listen to Spotify, where I can get the artists that I want to listen to. There's some local bands too. I mean, Sister Lucille, a great band. Obviously not getting commercial radio play, but I can crank them all I want on my Spotify. All right, go to cocktail number 2. It's still cold enough. Yeah, I didn't really figure it needed to be ice cold. I didn't want to really serve it on the rocks. I'm not really an on the rocks guy most of the time, especially during the winter time. I really like if I have a cold cocktail, I really like it straight up. So when I was looking up bourbon lemon cocktails, one came out for, it didn't have a specific name other than it just said it was a bourbon lemon thyme cocktail. It basically called for bourbon, lemon juice, and then simple syrup infused with thyme. So my riff on that is that this is instead of a thyme simple syrup, I've got a tarragon infused simple syrup. So I've got the bourbon. I've got 3 ounces of bourbon. I've got 1 ounce of my tarragon infused simple syrup and 1 ounce of fresh squeezed lemon juice. So that's my riff on that particular cocktail. I'll have to come up with a name at some point. But I do love tarragon, so that's why when the first time I saw a thyme simple syrup, I said, "Oh, I bet tarragon would be really good." Because in the past, I've made simple syrup using star anise. The tarragon is similar, but it's a little more subtle, I guess. It's a similar flavor, but much more subtle than star anise or anise. Gosh, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's nice. Wow. Again, and their particular measurements were different than mine, right? It was kind of equal parts bourbon to simple syrup, and that just seems insane to me. I don't want to drink that sweet, but so I've got 3 ounces of the bourbon, 1 ounce simple syrup, 1 ounce lemon juice, served with a lemon wheel, as you can see. Now, what I ought to do, because I kind of came up with these or decided to do this at the spur of the moment, is slice up some lemon wheels and dehydrate them myself so I can pull them out when I'm ready to make a cocktail. And I may do that with some of the lemons that we have. Thyme. Yeah, I don't mind thyme, but I think that might be good. But I really like tarragon. So when I first saw the idea of a thyme simple syrup, I thought, I bet tarragon would work because then I thought, oh, you've done star anise in the past, so do the tarragon. Okay, and it works. Uh, I am using dry tarragon. I don't have fresh. During the better months, I guess my wife will do some herbs. And in the past, we've had some tarragon, some rosemary. So I think if we're able to do those later on this year, I will save some of those herbs to really try some rosemary simple syrup, that kind of thing. Do some mint. Well, this is a tasty cocktail, man. It really is. Anybody watching, if you have any questions or comments, please put it up there. I will answer anything. I like to interact with my folks. Hope everybody's doing all right on this Saturday. I just thought I want to do something a little different. I typically do a live just to Facebook, but I decided to use my StreamYard because then I can send it to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter all at once because I hadn't done a Whiskey Whisper video in quite some time, or just specific Whiskey Whisper. So let's do 2 cocktails. That'll be a nice video. And 2 cocktails that I really haven't had before. And then put my own spin on some recipes, which is kind of what I like to do. And I like to cook. I do the same thing when I cook. If I need a template, right, I'll look up a recipe and say, okay, I like this, but I'm going to do it this way. I get an idea and I take it in a different direction. Like I like the idea for the bourbon lemon thyme, but I didn't necessarily want to do thyme, so I already had the tarragon syrup made, so we're gonna do that cocktail, but instead of thyme, we're gonna do tarragon. So As some of you might have guessed, I'm not really in this nice little pub behind me or whiskey bar, lounge, classic lounge. I just like the looks of it, so I use it as my backdrop with the canned jazz in the background that keeps panning in and out like we're in a Hitchcock film. we're in a Hitchcock film anyway. Uh, I made breakfast and lunch a little bit heavy today, so we took it down a notch for dinner. Took it down just as a soup. So I had some leftovers, and then I added a little bit to it. And so we ended up doing chicken enchilada soup with quesadilla. A Mexican version, a Mexican inspired version of tomato soup and a grilled cheese sandwich, basically. It was nice. It was getting cold here. We wanted something hot. The soup really was great on the throat. But now I thought some bourbon would work well. So anyway, so the first cocktail, if you missed the first part of the show or the video, show's a little pretentious, Tom. It's not a show. So it was a version of a drink called the Gold Rush, which called for bourbon, honey, and lemon. So my version of it took it just a little bit different. I didn't use those ingredients. I just took it a little bit different way. I used 3 ounces of the bourbon, 1 ounce lemon juice, 1 ounce of honey. But the honey I used was from that I bought locally. It's from a friend, Todd Shade. It's beautiful. It's beautiful local raw honey. It was absolutely brilliant. So it worked perfect for that cocktail. And then for the second cocktail, it didn't have a specific name other than it called itself a bourbon lemon thyme cocktail. So instead of the thyme, I used tarragon. So for this particular cocktail, I used 3 ounces of the whiskey, 1 ounce of my tarragon infused simple syrup, and 1 ounce of fresh squeezed lemon juice. So there you go. Excuse me. So they again, both of these cocktails, the recipes were served on the rocks, and I just didn't want to serve them on the rocks. So I served them both straight up. For me, it works, right? So I wanted to get them cold, but they don't necessarily need to stay ice cold. And the other part of that is I didn't want them to water down any. I don't want ice melting in my cocktail. I'm just not a fan. I made a mistake the other day, and my damn Instagram account got hacked, and now I've got messages floating out to everybody. So I put them, I had to answer all those, but I did put a message out there. I got hacked. Don't answer. But I don't typically message anybody, right? Just on rare occasion, and there's only a handful of friends that know that we have conversations. So if you've never gotten a direct message from me before, yeah, don't answer this. It was my fault. I just felt stupid after I did it. I looked at because of where the initial message came from. I thought it was legitimate. So I went, oh man. And I accidentally clicked the link, and oh fuck, I knew I screwed up as soon as I did it. So I'm having to go apologize to everybody because I'm an idiot. And I got hacked, some bitch. So I had to go change my password. I actually changed it twice because I changed it. I thought they're probably going to be able to hack that one too. So I changed to another one that they may be a little harder to hack, I guess, or I hope anyway. So anyways, I digress. Happy Saturday. I may be back a little later to do with beer. This will be it for the cocktails for me. We're putting the whiskey away. No more whiskey tonight, but I just had an idea. I really want to do 2 cocktails, right? 2 fresh cocktails, 2 cocktails I've never had, but maybe put my spin on them. Just do things a little bit different. That's something I like to start doing maybe maybe once a week. Maybe try to make that my Saturday thing. And just do 2 cocktails every Saturday. And kind of change them around to to the season, I guess. Again, both of these cocktails kind of seem like more summer cocktails. When I think whiskey and lemon, I'm thinking summer. However, with the tarragon and then serving it straight up and not on the rocks, I think I've kind of turned it around. I made an all-season cocktail. Anyway, but since we had fresh lemon, I kind of want to take advantage of having the lemon. So anyway, but I got a big bourbon here, and I've had 2 cocktails, so we're going to cut it here. But I may try to come back in an hour or so with some beer. Oh, boy, I really like this one. I got to be honest with you. So I like the Gold Rush just fine. The cold toddy thing works, but for my taste, I really think this is one I would do over and over again. I really love the bourbon with that time, not with that time, with the bourbon with the tarragon simple syrup that I've made really works. That just slight note of anise, right? Because that's what tarragon will give you. It's just a more subtle taste than say using anise or even fennel, right? Well, you know. And I make a good simple syrup. I use raw sugar, so I get it a little cleaner than using granulated sugar or your white sugar. So I got this beautiful simple syrup that I've infused with some tarragon, 1 ounce of fresh squeezed lemon juice, some beautiful bourbon. And so I've had a lot of folks tell me, well, why are you using good bourbon or good whiskey for cocktails? If you're using good whiskey, you should drink it neat. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. However, your cocktail is only as good as the products you use. So if you're using a whiskey forward cocktail like this, I mean, again, we've got 3 ingredients here. We've got 3 ingredients here. When you're making a cocktail like that, where you know you're going to taste the whiskey, yeah, your cocktail is only as good as the products you use. So, yeah, use a good whiskey. You're not wasting it by any means. So there you go. That's my thoughts on that particular matter. I'm the Whiskey Whisperer, Whiskey Evangelist, prolific whiskey drinker, purveyor, wisdom man. All around good guy. Good golly, Miss Molly. That is absolutely delicious, man. I got to tell you, I'm a genius. Anyways, Sláinte, have a good one. I'll talk to you later.